Okay, we're back. What is going on, everybody? It is LFR Jojo, and today we're going to be talking about the Donald Trump overturning DEI and affirmative action through his last executive order, which literally was yesterday. Um, this is a crazy topic, y'all. This is a crazy one. It's extremely controversial considering that it's been around since 1965, signed into place by Lyndon B. Johnson. So the fact that he's overturning like executive order, I think it's like 11246 specifically, um, very controversial. So before we get into the video, I kind of want to read it out. So it says, by the authority vested in me as president of the Constitution, as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered that he will be. He says his purpose is to have fairness based off of civil rights, and civil rights laws protect individual American persons from discrimination based on race, color, religion, or sex, and national origin. The reason why Donald Trump is saying this, I wish I could make it bigger. Why Donald Trump is saying this part specifically in Section 1, and this is the actual executive order. The reason why he's saying this specifically is because I believe he wants to make it known that there are civil rights laws and he's not trying to overturn civil rights. And he said he solely ensures the duty to keep these laws enforced. Yet today, roughly 60 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, critical and influential institutions of American society, including the federal government, major corporations, financial institutions, the medical industry, large commercial airlines, law enforcement agencies, and institutions of higher education have adopted and are actively using dangerous, demeaning, and immoral race and sex-based preferences under the guise of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion. So yes, he does directly mention DEI in the executive order, or diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, DEIA. I've never actually heard of this term. He said that these rules violate the civil rights laws of this nation. This is so ironic. All of this is pretty ironic considering how he's saying that this violates civil rights, considering this law was in place for Black people, and now here we are 60 some years later, and he's saying it violates the laws for white people. This is a crazy turn of events. Life is so insane. He says illegal DEA and DEIA policies not only violate the text and spirit of our longstanding federal civil rights laws, they also undermine our national unity as they deny, discredit, and undermine the traditional American values of hard work, excellence, and individual achievement in favor of unlawful, corrosive, pernicious, identity-based spoil system. Hardworking Americans who deserve a shot at the American dream should not be stigmatized, demeaned, or shut out of opportunities based off of their race or sex. Wow. I mean, I agree. I think hardworking Americans who deserve a shot should not be stigmatized, demeaned, or shut out of opportunities based off of their race or sex. That's 100% facts. That's true. These illegal DEI and DEIA policies also threaten the safety of American men, women, and children across the nation by diminishing the importance of individual merit, aptitude, hard work, and determination when selecting people for jobs and services in key sectors of American society, including all levels of government and the medical, aviation, and law enforcement communities. Yet, in case after tragic case, the American people have witnessed firsthand and disastrous consequences of illegal, pernicious discrimination that has prioritized how people were born instead of what they're capable of doing. So Donald Trump is outlawing every type of DEI, specifically in the contractor sector. However, you already know with executive order, private companies are going to follow suit, or they're going to have the right to follow suit, and most usually do. One company that said that they're not following suit, if you guys don't know, is Apple. Apple said that they're not following suit with these policies. However, a large majority of tech companies are, such as Facebook. I don't know if Google is. I know OpenAI is. I know Amazon is, and I know a lot of government contractors have to follow suit. And obviously, The executive branch of the government will also follow suit, considering that 2 million civil employees work in the executive branch. They have to follow suit. You're directly under the president. So he outlines a few more things in this policy that I want to cover before we get into the video. The first one, or section 2, the policy of the United States to protect the civil rights of all Americans, to promote individual initiative, excellence, and hard work. I therefore order all executive departments and agencies to terminate all discriminatory and illegal preferences, mandates, policies, programs, activities, guidance, regulations, enforcement actions, consent orders. He's overturning everything. He's overturning 100% of everything. There will be absolutely no DEI under Donald Trump, at least until the courts, if they fight this, they might, I don't know. But for the time being, there's absolutely no DEI. Donald Trump made sure to get this policy out as fast as possible. This is directly from the White House. Terminating illegal discrimination in the federal government. Yes. Yeah, he's overturning. The thing that people are up in terms about was the thing by Lyndon B. Johnson, which went against all types of discrimination, and it also outlined that there has to be affirmative action in the government. If you guys don't know, when Lyndon Johnson wrote that law, it says that there has to be a race-based policy in the government to make sure the government is running using equity. That's what he said. He said a government agency cannot function without affirmative action. And Donald Trump completely overturned that. I'm assuming he's leaving the discretion to the agencies now to hire without any type of race-based discrimination under the guise of the Civil Rights Act. That's what Donald Trump said. What do you guys think about this? Yeah. Hey guys, hope it's all is well. This is a big ruling. A lot of people are not a fan of this at all. They are very anti policies or anti overturning of affirmative action policies. I just wanted to read it out so you guys actually understood what it said. And yes, Donald Trump does say DEI. That's not clickbait. He is overturning DEI and affirmative action. Donald Trump is 100% doing that.
We are just hours away from the end of all DEI programs and those dedicated departments in the federal government. The Office of Personnel Management is set at 5 p.m. Eastern to meet the deadline for all government agencies to close those offices, and the employees, for at least the time being, will be on paid administrative leave.
Oh, Donald Trump is firing. I think he's fired everyone in these departments. So if you guys don't know, the executive order by Lyndon B. Johnson mandated that every single government agency has to have a department specifically for affirmative action and specifically for DEI programs in order to ensure that there are equitable hiring strategies being implemented. So what Donald Trump did is say, well, I'm getting rid of all that. We're getting rid of every single department in the federal government executive branch federal government that has to do with DEI, and they have to leave today. So that's exactly what Donald Trump's doing. Currently, the people are on administrative leave. That's what they're talking about now.
That follows President Trump's executive orders to bring an end to DEI and to make America merit-based. So he's going to do that at the federal level and restore the importance of our individual efforts within the workforce. During his inaugural address, President Trump made very clear his intentions to create a colorblind society.
I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
Yesterday, the president signed an executive order ending Biden's, quote, forced, illegal, and immoral discrimination, end quote, in the federal workforce and directing the government to serve every person with equal dignity and respect. However, liberal leaders are up in arms about the idea of merit-based society. Here's the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Why do we have DEI? We had DEI because you denied us diversity. You denied us equity. You denied us inclusion. DEI was a remedy to the racial institutional bigotry practiced in academia and in the...
And people like, what's his name, Al Sharpton, they're the problem with this whole discussion. And it's sad that he's the talking point of the liberal or democratic side because he's not making any sense. Yes, everyone knows DEI existed because there was discrimination. There was harmful rhetoric towards Black people. Obviously, we had an entire civil rights movement. If you don't understand that, then I don't know what to tell you. But when he's talking about it in modern sense, he said we had DEI because we had all these problems. We had to fight for our freedom. We had to do this. Yes, that's why he's getting rid of it, because Donald Trump believes that we don't have to do that anymore. And you are actually confirming his beliefs because you're saying in broad daylight that we don't have to, or you're implying it. You're talking about the origin of these policies. You're not talking about the current existence of these policies. Here's the problem. The current existence of these policies needs some reform. Whether or not you believe that they should get rid of the policies or they should keep the policies is your discretion. Obviously, the policies need some reform. There was preferential treatment in these policies, point blank, period. But what you're not going to do is sit here and just deny that any preferential treatment existed. That's not the case. That's just not true. And it sucks that you're going to sit here and spread rhetoric on the other side of the spectrum. Like, come on, man. It's just not true.
These corporations. Now you want to put us back in the back of the bus. We're going to do the Dr. King Rosa Parks on you.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is what I be talking about. This is what I'm saying. This rhetoric is harmless. It's not harmless. It's harmful. This is bad. What do you mean you're going to put us on the back of the bus? What are you talking about? We're not going to the back of the bus. And this is why no one takes this side seriously. You can't even have a productive conversation about DEI or affirmative action or executive orders signed by Lyndon B. Johnson. We can't even talk about executive order 11246 because the other side, the liberal side that opposes Donald Trump, says that this order will put us on the back of the bus. I'm not going to the back of the bus. I have a car. I'm not going to the back of the bus. What are you talking about? I'm sorry to pause it, but that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to say.
And The View co-host Sunny Hostin launched her own attack.
And thinking about that, and Donald Trump saying things that this country would be a meritocracy, you're talking about a man who didn't become the president of the United States because of merit. He had no political experience whatsoever. He had no business experience. He was given everything that he has. He is a legacy hire. He is, if anything, a DEI hire.
Well, I get what she's saying. If you were to have a resume for a presidency, Donald Trump had no political experience. However, the problem with this logic, and this actually goes into Donald Trump's executive orders, the orders are for the executive branch. The reason why they're not for the legislative branch or the judicial branch is because positions in those branches have to be appointed or voted in. So this ties back to your initial point. To say that Donald Trump was a diversity hire or that he didn't get hired off of merit, it's a little confusing to me because he was voted in by people or he was put into place by an electoral college. So he wasn't hired. He wasn't hired. I don't even know how to respond to this. He literally was not hired. I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't earn it higher.
Man, I'm just, my head is spinning. Ben, where is your Sunny Hostin and Reverend Sharpton decoder ring?
Yeah, I think you look at Al Sharpton, this is like, all right, I'm going to get my network back going. I'm going to raise some money. This is a great moment for me. I go back to Martin Luther King because he quotes Martin Luther King like he's on Martin Luther King's side. He's the exact opposite. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that for my 4 little children, we will one day live in a nation where we will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their character. That is exactly what the president is now saying. We don't need a melting pot that you organize in some liberal woke agenda where you say, how many transgenders do we need? How many gays? How many straights? How many African Americans? How many Asian Americans? He's saying we're going back to merit base. We want to look at Americans not based on, do you fill a quota for this country or for our business? But instead, we choose you because you're the best person to the job, regardless of the color of your skin. Al Sharpton needs to go back and watch that speech.
Yeah. So the way I look at this too, Cheryl, is everything that Ben just said, and I would add this. It also requires that you do your job.
Yes.
And part of your character be work ethic. All of the things together. And when you don't, they get rid of you.
So I have a comment that says Donald Trump is a DEI hire. How do you qualify to be president? It's a popularity contest. Precisely. You're 100% right. It's 100% a popularity contest, meaning that you're not necessarily hired to be president. You're voted in to be a president. So the reason I say he's not a diversity hire is because Donald Trump wasn't hired to be president. The public voted for him to be president. Whether or not you agree on if he deserves the position, that's why we have a government, and a part of our republic. A part of our republic is a democracy where we do vote. Of course, we put the powers back into the Electoral College's hands, but Donald Trump won the presidency. So it's hard to say he's a DEI hire because he won at something. He won the presidency. There wasn't any type of resume looking. They heard what he liked and they voted for him. That's just the reality of the situation. Donald Trump's ruling now is targeted specifically towards employees. And Donald Trump doesn't necessarily fall under the employee category since he was voted in. No resume was looked at and he wasn't hired in. But I do understand your perspective.
Yeah.
And DEI promises that what? You get to keep the job forever?
Read the EO. It's right here, folks. This is the EO. Here you go. Reward individual initiative, skills, performance, and hard work.
Merit-based.
Why is that controversial? Did Al Sharpton not read the executive order? Pretty sure he didn't because he thought about fundraising. But let me tell you something. We saw this in corporate America. We've talked about this already, guys. We saw Amazon and Walmart and Meta, John Deere, Harley, that's their ticker. They all started to get rid of DI initiatives a year ago because it didn't make sense. If you look at a report from 2000,
Playing devil's advocate, he was selected by his donors based on popularity, not merit. When you're voted in an office, it's usually based off of whether or not people respect you as a politician and whether or not they want you to represent them. I don't necessarily understand where the disconnect is. When you're hired based off of merit, meaning when you're applying for a job, they look at you based off of things that you can do. And that is not a democracy necessarily. That is naturally a meritocracy because they're looking at what you can do versus when you're a president or an elected official, such as the Senate or the House of Representatives. Yes, merit goes into those decisions. However, it is based off of a democracy where you have to be voted in. That's all I'm saying.
2022, when the Biden administration actually put down these policies, and this was about, let me give you the direct quote. This is about making sure that there was, gender equality, gender markers, pronouns, transgender, non-conforming, non-binary, all of that. Another report in 2024 back and looked at if it was successful, and it wasn't. There were minor changes in federal employee and employment stats. It was a waste of money and a waste of time, guys.
Kelly, you know what really stands out to me as the former child of a military family. I don't know if this yet touches the federal government and the U.S. military part of it, because DEI is something, and a woke agenda is something that you heard Pete Hegseth and a lot of people talking about during his confirmation hearings, and how that has held back in some cases our ability to really be ready militarily.
It's such an important point. And in fact, what we saw is DEI, the DOD, Department of Defense, spent $68 million on it. And that number went up to $114 million by the end of Biden's presidency. Department of Education spent $1 billion with a B. But what is so insidious to me in that executive order you have there, it begins by talking about Executive Order 13985. That was one of the first acts of Biden as president. It was a DEI executive order. We were all sitting here on this couch for 2 years talking about critical race theory. And then it was actually Governor DeSantis' office that said there's this new term, it's DEI. We weren't even talking about it, right? Yeah. But it goes back to day one of Biden's presidency. He had everyone submit equity plans, every department. So you think they're focusing on China and Russia at the Pentagon? No. They're focusing on equity. This was this man's priority, and no wonder we're all messed up as a country right now.
I need to look into that. I don't know whether or not what she's saying is true or false, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like everything she said is facts. However, I want to look into that. It is interesting that I guess the DOD spent however much on equity plans. I would say when you are for a department of such as government or Department of Education or Department of Defense, your job in the executive branch is to follow the orders of the president. So when you're in these departments, you will follow the orders of the president. It's not about have to. It's about that's my job. My job is to follow the orders. It's not about whether or not I want to do it or not. So if Biden said do that, that was Biden. That was in Biden's mind. I don't know why he did it. I didn't really follow his presidency super close during that time. But one thing that Trump is doing is he's mandating federal workers to go back in the office. I don't know all the details on this case. So I'm not going to say too much about it, but we're just going to get the opinions on the federal workers in the DC and the DMV who are going back in the office. I will say this: when you are working for a department or you are in the executive branch, your job is to follow the president's orders. You work for the president. So it's bad taste to defy his orders, if that makes sense. It's really bad taste because at the end of the day, when you are in the executive branch, your job is to do what's best for the country and to follow the orders of the head of the executive branch, being, in this case, Donald Trump.
While the end of remote work could be near for federal workers, President Trump's new executive order means federal workers must return to the office 5 days a week. It is a policy change that...
Please pray for LA. Please pray for LA. We did not forget about LA burning. It's people are worrying about race and sex orientation now because these type of executive orders do also affect people's lives. So we are still praying for LA, but these things do matter. They are very serious topics as well.
That's getting support now from DC's Democratic mayor. Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald's at the Capitol. And Fitz, President Trump did not delay on this one. He did this day one.
He certainly did, Angie, and expect that this is just going to be the first step in the president's efforts to remake the federal workforce, cut through bureaucracy, and instill more what he says is efficiency. Now, remember, work from home began during the first Trump administration. Back then, COVID-19 led to precautions and...
No, work from home didn't begin during the first Trump administration. Work from home began during the 2011 Teleworks Act. That was a case brought by Congress. So I get what he's saying. It became popular during Trump's first administration. However, technically, it didn't begin during Trump's first administration. I'm just telling you all that. Do with that information as you will. But this has been something that's been happening for the past almost 15 years.
Shutdowns, but the federal health emergency has been over since May 2023, but yet many federal workers still work from home. A recent Senate report found that only 6% of federal workers work a 5-day full-time basis, and nearly 1/3 of the entire federal workforce still works from home.
Well, that's also misinformation, and I didn't know it would be. That's also misinformation. The 6% is false. 61% of federal employees work in the office at least 4 days per week. So I get what he's trying to do, but I just don't want you guys to be misinformed. I understand there are sides to everything. And I understand that even if you do support federal workers going back to the office, if Donald Trump says that, you work for the executive branch. Do what he's like. You literally work for him. So you work for him. If he says go in the office, go in the office. It's not that serious. However, you shouldn't allow anyone to just flat out lie to you and give you information that's just not true. 6% of federal workers, that's just a flat out lie. 94% of federal workers don't just not work. That's a fallacy. 64% or 63% work at least 4 days a week in the workforce. Don't let people lie to you. I don't care what side they're on.
Many taxpayers who are in the nation's capital right now for the inauguration tell Fox 5 they've had to go back to work. They think all federal workers should as well.
We will also require that federal workers must return to the office in person.
People do need to go back to work, in my opinion, because everything's over now.
I don't necessarily think it's I think it's a political stunt.
Imagine how much money it's taking to actually run those buildings. No one's working there.
One of the supporters of this return to work effort is none other than D.C.'s Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser, was cited several times over the last few years that the lack of federal workers in the nation's capital has hurt the local economy. And while some labor attorneys tell Fox 5 they expect lawsuits to try to stop the White House effort, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen says he does have concerns about this one-size-fits-all approach.
This is something we're very focused on. Again, this is an area where we want to take a scalpel and not a meat axe to the issue.
Look, the reality is that before President Trump took office, there were collective bargaining agreements where a number of workers were allowed to work remotely.
Now, while there's been a lot of talk about this, the when it kicks in, that still isn't clear. The White House releasing an announcement on this saying that they're directing federal department heads to act as, quote, as soon as possible. Live on the Hill tonight. I'll send it back to you.
Right.
Well, this is very interesting. This is very, very, very interesting, man. So we're still on the meritocracy thing. Let's just look at this from a legal perspective, guys. The president is not based on a meritocracy. The president is based on a combination of a republic and a democracy. So yes, meritocracy could be an aspect of it, but that's not what it's based on. Legally, according to our laws, executive workers have to be hired using a meritocracy. According to Donald Trump now, and even prior to Donald Trump, when he writes these executive orders, or when Lyndon B. Johnson wrote the executive order, it was still a meritocracy. It was still a meritocracy with objections to any type of government agency not using affirmative action techniques. So I do understand this debate. It's a very interesting debate. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, what you are doing. I love these discussions. I think they're important for society. But my name is LFR Jojo. I'm going to end this live here. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Pieces.